Hey everyone, it's nice to have you guys back on my channel Nityashree's Bio, and it's your Nitya here. Today we'll be studying about a very important interaction, that is the second interaction that we studied previously, that is competition. So what is competition? Competition is basically a demand for a common resource. Usually it occurs between organisms of same species or organisms of different species. Usually we say it as intraspecific and interspecific competition. Intraspecific competition is between the individuals of same species, and interspecific competition is between the individuals of two different species. Intraspecific will be usually more intense because the demands between those two individuals are same. It is either fighting for the food, or it is fighting for the shelter, or it is fighting for the mate. Interspecific competition is between the individuals of two different species. You would have observed some spotted hyenas surrounding a lion which is having a piece of meat. Later, when lion gets surrounded by its fellow partners, it usually moves away, isn't it? So interspecific competition is usually less intense because any one of those species will be weaker, and obviously they want to survive, so they would run away to save their lives. Sometimes interspecific competition also might get intense when the resources which they are fighting for is the same and which they definitely require for their survival. That was a brief introduction about competition. The first topic that we are studying under competition is competitive relays. Competitive relays can be well understood with the example of Cornell's elegant field experiment. Joseph Cornell is an ecologist who conducted experiments in rocky coast of Scotland in the year 1950. He observed that there existed a competition between two species of barnacles. Number one, Balanus barnacle, and second one, Thamallus. Thamallus couldn't survive in the presence of Balanus. There was a local extinction seen, and there was also a lot of displacement that was taking place because these resources there was very scarce and Balanus had to survive. Hence it had to compete with the Thamallus. When they extracted all the Balanus from that particular region and shifted elsewhere, they observed that Thamallus increased in its number. So guys, this is the diagram for Cornell's elegant field experiment. Here I have represented Thamallus in red color and Balanus in blue color. So what happens here is, here you have to learn two terms very importantly. One is fundamental niche and second one is realized niche. Fundamental niche is a place where an organism can grow, survive and reproduce at natural conditions. Whereas realized niche is when it interacts with another organism and based on its convenience it restricts itself to a particular geographic area. We call that place as realized niche. Now we will see what is fundamental niche of these two organisms. Thamallus can grow from lower tide region to higher tide region basically, naturally. Whereas Balanus can grow from lower tide region to intermediate region. So if you see this diagram, you can see Thamallus is not growing up to the lower tide region. It is restricting itself into the higher tide region because Balanus is overtaking the potential of the Thamallus. Whereas Balanus is present in its own fundamental niche. So Balanus is not affected here in any way, whereas Thamallus is the only one who is affected. So its realized niche is only in the top high tide region, whereas Balanus realized niche and fundamental niche both are same. So this is example of competitive relays, and this is the Cornell's elegant field experiment. Next topic that we study under competition is Gauss competitive exclusion principle. It states that two closely related species competing for same resources cannot coexist indefinitely, and competitively inferior one will be eliminated eventually. So two closely related species, two different species only, but they are very closely related, which means genus name will almost be same and species name will differ. If they are competing for same resources, the competitively inferior one, which means the weaker one, cannot exist along with the superior one, and eventually it will be eliminated, which means it might also lead to extinctions. This particular phenomenon is not true in all the cases. Usually in competitive, either one of them will get hurt, they will not be extincted, but if it is possible only if the resources are limited. If not, the organisms won't bother each other so much. So we'll see one example for this. It is between two species of Paramecium. One is Paramecium aurelia and another one is Paramecium caudatum. What happened in case of these is, in laboratory when they were grown separately, they were able to grow without being bothered and they were able to grow to their fullest. But when they were combined in a culture medium together, Paramecium aurelia, it outcompeted the Paramecium caudatum, which means that it competed with the Paramecium caudatum for the food source, and Paramecium caudatum started to decrease in its number and it started to even disappear from the culture medium. So this is an example for Gauss competitive exclusion principle. The last topic that we have under competition is resource partitioning. Here organisms come to a compromise, which means they don't want to hurt another organism or another species for their survival. So what do? Is they forage at different times, or their foraging patterns will be different, or the food which they feed on will be different. Under resource partitioning, Mark Arthur studied the relationship between 5 closely related species of warblers. Warblers are those tiny birds, okay. The 5 species were Cape May warbler, Blackburnian warbler, bay-breasted warbler, black-throated warbler and yellow-rumped warbler. They coexisted together without harming one another, and just they changed their foraging patterns and the places where they forage on the same tree. So here Cape May warbler occupied usually top of the tree, and Blackburnian warbler occupied the upper branches, bay-breasted warbler middle branches, black-throated warbler side branches and yellow-rumped warbler low branches. So their basic food was buds of the tree and the needles, and needles in the sense leaves, and old needles, new buds were all their favorite. So they occupied different regions on a tree for foraging, which made their life easier, and they avoided competition and coexisted with each other happily. Thank you so much for watching. Please do like, share and subscribe. Thank you.